Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience. Now I'm here tonight with my first impressions of the Spirit Torino Radiante 1706 Special Edition. And what separates this from the normal edition is you can see the fancy paint job on it, and that tells you that it's the 1706 Special Edition. These are made in Italy. And this model currently retails at $2,450 US. This is a full-size over-the-ear design, and it is a closed-back headphone. It uses a dynamic driver in what Spirit Torino calls a passive radiator design. And this headphone has an impedance of 32 ohms. The sensitivity is not listed on the website, but I would consider these probably average as far as how hard they are to drive for a dynamic type driver with a 32 ohm impedance. The weight is listed at 370 grams, but on my kitchen scale, I'm coming up with 466 without the cable. So quite a bit of difference, and I don't know if my scale is perfectly accurate, but it seems to be pretty close on most headphones. So 466 grams does make this a little bit on the heavy side. Not super heavy, but a little bit on the heavy side. These headphones, as you can see, they have a design has kind of a grotto look as far as the head strap, the height adjustments, the fact that the cups swivel all the way around. But these do, they're a little bit different. These use an entirely aluminum ear cup on them. They have aluminum yokes. They have an aluminum block on the head strap. The ear pads are tapered. As you can see, they're thicker on the back, which gives them a little bit of a forward angle, which I believe helps move the soundstage forward a little bit. The ear pads are leather on the inside and a synthetic material on the inside called Alcantara, which is very soft and feels very comfortable. And the head strap is leather on the inside and I believe a suede material on the outside. The cable is detachable, and these use a standard 3.5 millimeter connection, which is becoming pretty common. A lot of headphones are coming with that connection now. And the cable itself that came with these is it's about 2.2 meters long, I believe. It's a soft, flexible material, doesn't make any noise rubbing on itself. At the headphone end, once again, it uses 3.5 millimeter connections that are clearly marked with an R and an L. And at the amp end, it came with a 4-pin XLR connection, which I requested. Excuse me. But the cable is also available with a standard single-ended 6.3 millimeter connection or 1/4 inch, or you can get a 2.5 millimeter balance connection or a 4.4 millimeter balance connection. The headphones, even though, like I said, they're a little bit on the heavy side, but they seem very comfortable to me. The ear pads are soft, the material's really nice. I like the way they fit around my ears. They're easy to adjust to the right height. They have just enough clamping force that they don't move around or feel like they're going to fall off, but they don't squeeze on my head. And I actually find these very comfortable. The ear cups seem to be just a little bit on the small side, but they do fit around my ears comfortably. And I don't like headphones that rub on my ears a lot, and I definitely don't like when I can when I have a shallow ear pad and my ears touch, in on the guard to the speaker or whatever. But that's not the problem with these at all. So I actually find these very comfortable, even though they're slightly on the heavy side. But if you've watched any of my videos, I've said it many times that heavy headphones don't bother me. A strong clamping force bothers me a lot more than heavy weight. Getting into the sound of these a little bit, and I've only had these, well, I've had them a couple weeks now, but I've only had chance to put maybe, I don't know, 3-4 hours on these. So, I'm going to give you my first impressions on the sound, and I want to put probably 20-30 hours on these before I try to give a full review, so I'm going to need a couple weeks to get that together. But my first impressions, the first thing I noticed is that, like the other two Spirit Torino headphones that I've done first impressions on, they're definitely bassy headphones. They're definitely on the bassy side of neutral. So tone balance, I would say, definite emphasis in the bass, and a little on the dark side of neutral. Not extremely, just a slight roll off in the treble. So I would say just definitely on the bassy side of neutral and slightly on the dark side of neutral. As far as frequency extension, I would say they have very good extension on the bottom. They go deep into the sub bass. On the top, decent, but like I said, a little rolled off in the treble. They don't go real high. As far as the bass, I would say definitely a very strong bass, but like the other Spirit Torino headphones, well-controlled bass. And of the three, I would say these are definitely the most bassy of the three. Number 2 would be the Super Leggera, and what's the other one? The Ragnar, the Twin Pulse Ragnar, I would say would be the least bassy and the closest to neutral of the three. But anyway, the bass is strong, but it's solid, it's tight, it doesn't get muddy, it doesn't get distorted. It's a lot of bass, but it's well controlled. The mids, I would say, are thick and rich. They're the opposite of thin. They give a lot of weight to the music. I would say they're slightly set back, especially compared to the bass. The vocals, especially female, seem to be set back a little bit on the stage, a little bit distant. The treble is good, but it doesn't go real high. Well, it might go high, but the intensity of it is rolled off a little bit. So, there's definitely, these start out with a lot of bass emphasis, and the other two are a little bit V-shaped. I think I said the Super Leggera was kind of neutral through the mid-range and treble, but now that I'm getting more time in with these, I would say both those and the Twin Pulse Ragnar are both a little bit on the V-shape. More emphasis on the bass than in the treble, but a little bit of a bump in the treble, where these don't seem to have that bump in the treble. So the treble is a little rolled off on these. The detail, like the other two, I would say is good, but none of the three are the last word in detail. They all have sort of a little bit setback mid-range, which kind of limits them as far as how much detail they can extract. But it's good. The detail is good, and I don't miss anything on them unless I compare them directly side by side to, a more analytical headphone, which would be something like the Kennerton Thror, which is super detailed, but, it's also, it's going to bring out every flaw in your recording. So these are a little more set back and not quite as detailed. The imaging, I would say, is pretty precise on these. I can hear what direction and locate everything, all the different sounds, the instruments. The soundstage, I would say, is good for a closed back headphone. They're not the widest, but no closed back headphone that I've heard has been the widest soundstage, but they do seem to have pretty good depth, and they have pretty good height to the soundstage. I'm hearing some things from up pretty high and pretty far away in front, so good width and depth of the soundstage. As far as isolation, They seem to do a pretty good job. They seem to keep outside noise out pretty well as far as passive isolation, and they also seem to do a pretty good job of holding sound in. I can listen to these at a fairly loud volume and very little leakage of sound coming out of these. The dynamics is good, especially in the bass. The bass is very punchy and hits hard. And I did want to mention, and I usually don't get into this in first impressions, but I'm going to with this headphone because I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. My preference for a headphone is something pretty close to neutral with maybe a slight emphasis in the bass, maybe a 3 decibel emphasis in the bass. And these have, I'm guessing, probably a 10 or 12 decibel emphasis on the bass. And so for my personal taste, these are a little bit bassy and a little bit dark from what I would consider my ideal headphone. I'm not saying these are a bad headphone at all, because there are a ton of people out there that like bassy headphones, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that like these just the way they are. I mean, if you think the Sundara is a little bit bright from Hi-Fi Man, you know, you're going to probably like the treble slightly rolled off on these. My personal preference, I like headphones that are a little bit on the bright side. So anyway, like I said, I'm not saying these are a bad headphone at all. I mean, because everyone's looking for something different, and if you want a bassy headphone that doesn't have bright or harsh treble, this may be the perfect headphone for you. If you're a bass head, this may be your dream come true. But anyway, because I do like headphones that are a little more neutral, I did experiment with EQing this a little bit. I hooked up to Shit Loki 4-band equalizer, and what I did is I cut the bass a little bit. I left the lower mid-range at neutral. I didn't change that. I gave a slight increase to the upper mid-range and a little bit of increase to the treble, and got these where I really liked them. And not every headphone responds well to EQ. Some just don't respond much at all. Others distort easily. And this headphone actually responded very well to EQ. And I was able, with a little bit of tweaking with the Shit Loki, I was able to get this just where I liked it and really, really enjoyed it. It became a really enjoyable headphone for me, for my personal taste. And I was also, by giving a little bit of boost in that upper mid-range, I was able to extract a lot more detail out of it, which brought it real close to some of my favorite headphones as far as the detail. So with a little bit of tweaking with an EQ, you know, if the frequency response of these isn't what you consider ideal, they do respond well, and I was able to get it really close, and these instantly became one of my favorite closed-back headphones. So I'll go more into that. I'll experiment a little more and give you some numbers and all that when I do my full review in a couple of weeks. I want to get, you know, maybe 20-30 hours on these, and try to go a little more in depth, talk about equipment, talk about what music I'm using and all that. So far I've used the Head Amp GSX Mini to listen to these headphones, which is an excellent amp in my opinion. But I want to try to experiment a little bit more with some different types of music, and, you know, be able to give you a better, you know, idea of what these sound like. But for now, I'll just say they're warm, they're bassy, they're slightly on the dark side, but not terribly dark. They give a lot of weight to thin recordings. They are very forgiving of less than perfect recordings. They're very non-fatiguing. They never get harsh or sibilant. And I will wrap it up with that and give you some more details in a couple weeks. So once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you are all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. Thank you.